Hello, everybody. I am Bryla McNees, dietitian with the UK Health and Wellness Program. It's great to have so many of you here with me today for this monthly installment of Eating with Intention. Today, we're going to talk about the power of a mental pause. We're going to talk about why it is so powerful, how helpful it can be to you in your everyday life. And also, we're going to discuss strategies to help you do this because it's easier said than done. Our lives are very busy and hectic, chaotic, complicated. And this isn't always an easy thing to do. So, we're going to hopefully give you some strategies that help it feel a little easier. I want to start with this quote. This was a quote that I saw a few times as I was researching this topic and putting together the presentation. Viktor Frankl is apparently a Austrian psychiatrist. He's credited with this quote. And it really spoke to me, and I think it really speaks to kind of setting the tone and framework for the discussion today. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. I want to take a moment to look at each part of this quote, really. Between stimulus and response, right? So, this is what we're really getting at. This is where the mental pause hopefully is going to happen for you. That is the space that Viktor Frankl is talking about. There's some kind of stimulus, trigger, emotion, okay? And I think a lot of us feel that this automatically turns into some kind of response or reaction, and that happens very, again, habitually, reactionary, automatically, with not even really much or any thought or intention behind it. It's just what we do. It's how we respond to that particular stimulus, okay? But there is space. And we got to find that space because that will allow us to choose our response and perhaps choose something different that better serves our long-term well-being goals, okay? Particularly when it comes to eating. Um, so that space is really powerful because that is where we get to choose and feel like we're choosing instead of feeling like we are always reacting. Okay, nobody likes that feeling, but so many people feel that way. And then finally, being able to choose that response is what we grow from. It's how we learn. Okay. It's how we make progress towards those bigger goals. Okay. And that's really where I think a lot of people feel freedom, where they just don't feel beholden to those kind of instinctive, automatic, habitual reactions that they've had in the past. So we're going to touch on all of this today. What is a mental pause? Okay. Let's kind of just make sure we're all on the same page with this. It's an intentional moment to stop and bring your full awareness to that moment. Okay. It's not about doing nothing. In a way, it is. And you'll see that when we talk about one of the strategies. But it's really the purpose of it, the end result is is about doing something different, like we just mentioned. Okay. Um, and it also, it like we saw in that quote, this pause gives your mind space to start to notice things like what thoughts am I having in response to this stimulus trigger emotion? What emotions are popping up? What sensations, maybe physical sensations in my body are popping up? Um, and that is information that helps us make a better choice, a different choice, right? Instead of just reacting and acting very automatically. So let's talk about how a mental pause can help with eating. Like I said, hopefully a mental pause can help with lots of different areas of your life, but I wanted to be sure I brainstorm some ways that it can help with eating and food related decisions. Certainly, it can help you distinguish between physical and emotional hunger. And this is something we touched on in last month's presentation about hunger and fullness. But so often we eat Right, not because we're physically hungry, because again, there is some stimulus or trigger that is making us feel stressed, or maybe we're just bored or seeking comfort. Okay. So that pause helps us really tap into what kind of hunger is this. A pause can also allow us to meet our true emotional needs without reliance on food. Okay. Food is the quick, easy, enjoyable way to temporarily make you feel better, right? That's why we do it. Okay. But a pause helps us ask, like, what's really going on here? Okay. What are the emotions? What is it that I need in this moment to make me feel better? What could do that other than food? A pause allows you to think through all of that. A pause also shifts your brain from the hot emotional system to the cool rational system. So, this is a very layperson way of explaining how the brain works because I'm not a brain expert, but you do have different right parts of your brain, okay? And some are more responsible for kind of emotional reactions and processing, and other parts are a little bit more geared towards like problem solving and logic and, using rationale and facts and reason. Okay. So that's what I mean by switching from the hot system to the cool system. All right. A pause allows you to do that. A pause can also help reduce impulsive behavior. Okay. Right. By interrupting that trigger response cycle. Again, you guys know, especially when it comes to emotional eating, just having some trigger that elicits an emotion, often the automatic habitual response is to grab some kind of food. And usually it's not the most nutrient dense, health promoting food that we're grabbing in those moments either. Okay. So if you feel like, geez, I feel like it's impulsive. I just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And, you just kind of feel powerless to stop it. A pause is what's going to help you be able to do that. And finally, a pause can help you improve your relationship with food overall because it will allow you to focus on making choices that are rooted in self care. Okay, so again, really, this pause is helping you understand what is truly going on and what is my response going to be based on that again, instead of acting impulsively, automatically, habitually. All right, and when you can do that, you usually feel less guilt or shame about whatever your response to that stimulus was, okay? Because you are truly caring for yourself and building kind of that self trust with your body. I thought this was a helpful graphic. Um, it talks about the three minds, right? So we were just talking about that hot emotional system and that cool rational system in the brain. Okay. And you can kind of see here what the hallmarks of those two brains are. So the emotional system is, you want to do what feels good in that moment. It's often reactive or defensive, and it's often in opposition to what the rational mind would tell you to do if you were able to tap into your rational mind in that moment. On the other hand, the rational mind is what makes sense. Decisions are based on logic and past events, right? Just kind of information processing, thinking about, what you know from your past experiences. And it also is better at suppressing and ignoring emotions so that you can focus more on that logic and reason. But apparently, and I didn't know this, there's what they call a wise mind, and that is an overlap of the two parts of your brain. And that ideally, again, with practice and time and patience, ideally, this is what we want to tap into in these moments of pause, is to find this overlap between the hot and cool system, the emotional and rational system, where we can balance the two things. Okay. We can honor emotions. We can honor that, hey, we feel angry or we feel stressed or overwhelmed, but we can still have the intention to act rationally, right? And make some decisions that are rooted in true self care and logic based problem solving in that moment. Okay. So we're going to refer back to this wise mind in a minute, but I thought this was really helpful that it doesn't have to be necessarily like an all or nothing proposition, right? That you're either going on emotion or going on reason, that there is kind of an overlap, and that's really what we're trying to do so we can honor kind of all parts of our brain in terms of information and emotion. Okay, how are we doing so far? Everybody good? Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. Okay, because now we're going to get into a little bit more kind of practical strategies and techniques, right? So this is called the STOP method. It is rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy, if people are familiar with that. Um, it's used in a variety of situations where people just want to, again, stop doing the thing they've always done in response to a trigger or a stimulus. Okay. And so obviously this applies to food, but it can certainly apply to other addictions or gambling, things like that. Um, and it's an acronym. It stands for STOP, take a break, observe, and proceed mindfully. Now, I know this might seem like, wow, that's a lot of steps, Karen. Like, how am I going to have the time to do that? The goal really is that this should take less than a minute, especially once you've kind of practiced with it, um, and maybe even much less than that. Okay, but no, this is not a long, drawn out exercise. Okay, this is something that you can do, you know, in your head in a pretty short amount of time, especially with some practice. Okay, so just keep that in mind. This is very much meant to be an in the moment kind of technique. All right, so let's look at each of these. All right, so stop. That's pretty obvious, okay? But hard to do, right? I always say that simple is not easy. These are two different things, right? If it was easy, we'd all be doing it. Simple just means the concept of it is quite simple, and it is. You just stop everything for a moment, okay? You're basically freezing. You're not going to talk, especially if other people are involved, right? Like me with my kids. Don't move, don't act, don't, shoot off that email that you're mad about or respond to the text or whatever it is. And then don't do anything, okay? You don't need to fix anything yet, right? You are just interrupting that automatic reaction, okay? You're just stopping. That really is it, okay? So that's first step. Second step is to take a step back, okay? Sometimes you see this listed as take a breath um, in the stop method, but I think take a step back can include taking a breath. And so we're going to go with this one because it's a little bit broader and it gives you a few other options to do at this point. So take a step back. Maybe you need to physically remove yourself from a situation. Okay. Maybe there are other people involved that you want to just step away from. Maybe you are in a place, the place you're in is just part of what's causing the anxiety or overwhelm, like actually being in your office. Maybe you need to get somewhere that is not your office. Okay. So if it's appropriate and you're able to do it, physically remove yourself. Okay. That automatically starts to shift your brain, and how you're processing things. Then you could take a few deep breaths. This is actually very powerful, okay, in terms of breathing. Breathing does calm down your nervous system. Um, it's a way to signal safety to your brain. And it certainly is just a very practical way to create some space between an impulse and an action. We all need to breathe, right? So why not? And this is, we're going to talk about a little bit more intentional breathing exercise you could try in these moments. But even just a simple, you know, deep breath, hold, relax, a couple of those just to give yourself a moment. That can be very powerful in and of itself. Okay. Again, you're buying yourself some time, creating that space, and hopefully refocusing your attention a little bit and calming down your nervous system. Maybe close your eyes for a few seconds, or maybe do that while you're taking the breath, okay? Or even just again, sitting somewhere quietly with your eyes closed. Closing your eyes does help focus attention inward, right? Because if you think about how stimulating it is to have your eyes open and take in all the visual information that you see, you're constantly having to process that, okay? It's just like an automatic distraction from everything else. So if you can close your eyes for a few moments, that will automatically turn you inward to paying attention to, what you're feeling physically, sensations, maybe some of your emotions, okay? Maybe it's going to make the breathing a little bit more effective as well. So yes, try to just close your eyes if you can. And if other people are involved, okay, but you still need to kind of be around them, maybe you can't remove yourself from the situation, maybe communicate your pause, right? And say something like, I need to think about this. I'm going to have a session here coming up soon about how to deal with social pressure to eat. This might be actually a great strategy for something like that, right? Where you're feeling like overwhelmed of like someone's pushing food on me and I need to eat and I feel like I need to eat it, right? And that's like the trigger, reaction kind of cycle. And maybe a way to break that in those situations is to just say, oh, thank you for offering. Let me think about that. I need to figure out like, how hungry I am or what else I'm going to try. Or yes, thank you. I might give that a try later, right? But again, that's a way to pause, build a pause, right? Um, in a situation where you feel pressured to eat something, perhaps. Oh, okay. So next we're going to observe. Okay. This is really where the mindfulness starts to come in. All right. You are becoming the observer instead of the reactor. It's almost like you have to, I don't know, it's almost like you are outside of yourself. To me, that's what it often feels like when I'm trying to do this. I'm like trying to be like a third party, kind of like neutrally observing myself. That's hard to do, okay? But with practice, it gets a little easier. But you really are trying to tune into what's happening without judgment. This is so important, the without judgment part. I mean, how often do you just assume that when you have a feeling, that means it's true? Right? Like, oh, I'm anxious about this. That must mean that thing is a bad thing. Right? We do that all the time where we, conclude truths based on our feelings, and that's not always true. It just kind of feeds kind of whatever that emotion is, right? But we're really trying not to judge it, right? We're just trying to say, I feel anxious and stop there. Not what does that mean, right? And try to make conclusions off of it, okay? Or like, oh, I have butterflies in my stomach. That must mean I'm nervous about something. Well, no, maybe it means something else. I don't know. But you're just trying to observe without judging or jumping to conclusions about what that means, okay? It's information gathering. So you might start by noticing a few things like what sensations, as I mentioned, do you feel in your body? This is really helpful. To think about are my, just do my shoulders feel tight, right? Are my shoulders up to my ears because I'm so tense and stressed? Do I have a headache? Am I a little like trembly, shaky? Is my heart racing? Do I have a knot in my stomach? Do I have tightness in my chest? Am I fidgeting a lot? I mean, so many physical sensations that can clue us in to what emotions might be triggering those, right? A lot of our emotions manifest in some kind of physical sensation. So what thoughts are showing up, right? Again, what are you thinking? Like, oh, I'm thinking I'm really stressed out about this deadline my boss just gave me. Okay, fine. But again, we're going to stop there. We're not going to judge it. We're not going to try to problem solve. We're just trying to observe the thoughts. And what are the feelings? Well, yeah, again, am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I feeling like, who knows, maybe I feel like I'm being taken advantage of by my boss. And there's so many things, right? So really trying to dig deep and get as specific as you can about the feelings you're experiencing. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. You're not analyzing or reacting at this moment, okay? You're really just trying to figure out what's driving that reaction, what's driving that kind of initial impulse, okay, to want to respond automatically or habitually or in that emotionally charged way, right? What's fueling that, okay? And that is what is going to help you decide what to do next, gathering that information. Okay, so that's the final step here is to proceed mindfully. Easier said than done, right? But now that you have slowed down and observed and gathered some information, it's time to decide what action, if any, to take. maybe you don't take any action. And like I said in the beginning, that is a perfectly legitimate course to take, but it still is actually making a different choice than what you might have done before. So it still is a choice. Maybe before I would have, you know, gone in there and started an argument with my boss or coworker or something, but now I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to let it go. That's a choice. That's a good choice to try and experiment with. Absolutely. Okay. Um, this is where you might also want to tap into that wise mind that we talked about, right? What is that balance between my emotions and what my rational logical brain is telling me? Okay, my rational logical brain is telling me no, you're not actually physically hungry. My emotional brain is saying, but you feel really stressed out about this deadline you just got for your boss, and you really want to go get some chocolate out of the vending machine. Okay, what is a way to honor both of those and account for both of those? Okay, well, maybe now I need to go remove myself from the office. Maybe I need to step away. Maybe I need to get some fresh air. Maybe I need to do some other self-care things that would help relieve that stress that don't involve food and not go to the vending machine, while still honoring that I feel this way, right? You can still honor that you feel a certain way without responding to it with food. Especially, again, when we're talking about it specifically when it comes to eating, all right? Um, we can hold these things together. Like I said, it's not an all or nothing with the brain of like, I can only respond emotionally or logically. You can respond in both ways, right? And if you know what the emotion is, you can act logically in a way that helps take care of that emotion and soothe it, okay? And meet that need. And that's what the goal is here. As often as possible, you want your actions to align with your goals, your values, your long-term well-being. Okay? What is it that's really going to help me long term? Right? What aligns with my values of, again, trying not to respond to emotions with food, right? I know that's good for me mentally, physically, right? How do I do that? Um, how do I just manage stress in effective ways? Well, that's usually not through food, right? So making decisions that align with those goals, values, long-term well-being, all right? And maybe you need some clarification on that. It might be worth sitting down and thinking about what are my goals and values as it relates to how I care for myself, right? What does long-term well-being look like for me, right? What is it that I want? Okay. And that might help you be able to get a little bit closer to choices that align with those. Okay, so that's stop, right? But I do want to talk about some other ways that you can take a pause. Maybe stop feels a little overwhelming. Maybe there's too many steps involved right now for you. Maybe it's something you want to work up to, but there are certainly other, you know, simpler ways, I guess you could say, to take a pause. One is to do a grounding technique. Now, you could certainly look this up, look up grounding techniques. You'll see all kinds of suggestions, but this is a very common one. That if you're feeling, again, that you want to react to something, okay? A way to pause is to take notice of your surroundings and narrate them to yourself and name things that you can see, hear, touch, and smell. It's just a way to get outside your head and focused on something else, okay? Especially if you feel like it's maybe too difficult to kind of go inward at that moment, just step outside yourself, all right? And just, oh, I see a green car over there. Maybe you step outside, you're like, oh, I see a green car over there, and I hear some birds chirping, and oh, I see these kids sitting on the lawn studying. Oh, look, I can touch these flowers here. I can smell these flowers. Um, it could be a variety of things, right? But using your senses to just explore your current environment for a few moments is a really effective way to get a pause. A breathing technique. Now, again, there are many breathing techniques as well. But one that is often talked about is something called box breathing, and it's very simple. And it's called a box breathing because it's basically like it's got like you can think about it like going in a box. Okay, so you kind of slowly inhale to a count of four, you hold your breath, and then you um slowly exhale for a count of four, and then you hold your breath for a count of four, and then you repeat. So it's kind of like going in like a little bit of a square, if you think about it that way. Um, so yeah, this is very effective. Again, because it does take some intention to slowly inhale to a count of four, hold your breath for four, exhale to four, and then hold your breath for another count of four. Okay. That takes some intention to do. I tried it the other day once I had put this in the presentation. I was like, oh, let me actually try that. I was personally having a moment of overwhelm because my daughter got her driver's license, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to deal with the stress of her driving alone somewhere whenever she leaves the house? That was my moment of overwhelm. I didn't know what to do with myself. And so I actually tried this box breathing, and it was really helpful. I could feel like my heart rate slowing down. I could feel my nervous system kind of calming down. Very effective. Um, okay, do a quick body scan. Maybe you guys have heard of that. Again, different ways to do this. Sometimes you see it, presented as laying down. Most of us can't do that when we're in these situations. So even just sitting comfortably in a chair, this is where it would probably be really helpful to close your eyes so you can kind of focus inward, bring attention to different parts of your body. Usually you start at your head and go to your toes, or start at your toes and go to your head, and you just kind of slowly work your way up or down through your body, noticing sensations, relaxing any tension that's there. You might also challenge your thoughts, right? Maybe you're having these like negative, unhelpful thoughts, right, that are prompting you to just kind of do this reactive, automatic thing. So again, that's where it helps to just, is this a fact? Is this a feeling? How else can I kind of interpret this situation? What other alternate perspective can I have on it? Maybe in the moment of that deadline, it's like, no, my boss isn't taking advantage of me. My boss just really has faith in me that I am the best candidate for this situation or this project. And that's a good thing. Maybe there's some good things that can come out of being in charge of this project, whatever it is, right? But just reframing in general might be helpful. And maybe using some affirmations, right? Using, some positive self-talk. A lot of people have like little affirmations that maybe they keep with them. Maybe put a little post-it note or things like that, or on your phone, even something you can look at in these moments that just remind you, right? Of like, hey, everyone has difficulties. I can overcome this. This is temporary, right? These kind of things. Those are very, those are very grounding as well to be able to tap into some of those affirmations or mantras that are very reassuring. And then finally, just some general tips for practice with this. Maybe start by practicing with small moments that are fairly low in distress, not maybe particularly consequential, all right, so that you can build familiarity and confidence with the process, right? Especially with the stop technique. That would be definitely where that was more applicable, okay? But practice in, yeah, again, kind of like those low consequence moments where emotions are maybe not quite as hot and the consequences are not quite as maybe, you know, big, and go from there. Create reminders. All right. So maybe put some sticky notes somewhere of like, that say stop on them or breathe or something like that. Right. Um, Maybe even setting reminders on your phone or in your calendar that just remind you to stop and check in with yourself once in a while. Maybe there's not even any emotion that has to prompt that or situation, stimuli, trigger. Maybe it's just I get in the practice of doing this so that when I need it, I can easily tap into the practice of checking in with myself and all of that, right? Thinking about what are my thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, those kinds of things. Practice mindfulness. So, kind of like I was just talking about, doing something intentionally daily that strengthens your mindfulness and ability to kind of stay in a present moment, all right? Because that is really hard to do. I don't know how many of you have actually ever tried to just like stay in a moment and not let thoughts wander and other things happen. Okay, it's really hard. And the more you can practice moments like that intentionally, the more you strengthen the neural pathways that allow you to tap into that when you actually need it. And then finally, we want to try to use self-compassion. I've probably talked about this before, but it's easy, really easy when we, again, don't make the choice we want to make and we still react in that automatic, unhelpful way to just get down on yourself and beat yourself up. And, that turns into a pretty bad downward spiral. So Instead of getting frustrated with yourself for feeling overwhelmed or like you didn't make a good decision, again, always reminding yourself you're doing your best. You're human, okay? And still trying to learn something from it. That is key, right? And you can't learn something from your mistakes if you're too busy beating yourself up, right? The area for growth and learning, going back to that first quote, is really in the self-compassion, right? The openness to learning. And we're not open to learning when we're just down on ourselves. So trying to just show yourself some grace and kindness. All right, that was a lot. I had a feeling I might go over a little bit, so I'm sorry to keep you 4 minutes over, but I am happy to address any comments or questions you might have about anything I've presented here today. Do you guys have any little tidbits that kind of stuck with you that you feel like you might try to use going forward? Or maybe I'd like to hear if you already use some of these strategies and how they're helpful for you. Ah, Katie, good to have you here. Box breathing works for me. Yeah. Like I said the other day, I really did earnestly try it for the first time and I was amazed. But again, even just simple, really deep breathing. So many of us really, I think throughout the day I catch myself doing this. I'm doing very shallow breathing, really, like, and that's not good. That's not ideal. Yeah, so practicing as deep breathing as you can, intentional breathing. Any other thoughts or comments? Well, I do hope this is something you can practice with. And I say that practice truly. Like, it's an experiment. You're not going to get it. You're not going to get it right the first time. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be messy. Um, it's going to feel maybe unnatural at first. But I do encourage you to keep working with it, keep practicing with it, and it will get easier and hopefully feel more natural to take these pauses whenever you feel like you need them. All right. Well, everyone, thank you again for being here. I will send the recap email out tomorrow. I do hope to see you at a future event. Our next event is next Thursday at 2:30. It's the Lazy Dietitian, and I will be talking about less mess cooking. So how do we get stuff prepared in the kitchen with making as little mess as possible to clean up? All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.